Ever feel like your brain has a mind of its own? Well, get ready for a deep dive into the fascinating world of human thinking, because today we're exploring Thinking Fast and Slow.
Oh, a classic.
This book is, it's really packed with insights about how our minds work,
Yeah.
especially those snap decisions.
It's interesting, isn't it, like how we often just function on autopilot,
Right.
relying on gut feelings and quick judgments.
Yeah, totally.
And that's where the whole idea of two systems of thinking comes in,
There
system
we-
one and system two.
Exactly. It's like having these two little voices in your head just battling it out.
Yeah,
So system one, that's the fast one, the instinctive one.
right.
Helps us make those split-second decisions. And then system two, that's the slower one.
Yes.
More thoughtful, steps in when we really need to, like, solve a problem.
Exactly.
A complex problem.
And thinking fast and slow really dives into that, the power of system one.
Okay.
You know, constantly working in the background, weaving stories together,
Yeah.
connecting ideas, even jumping to conclusions
Yeah.
based on, very little information.
I mean, think about it. Like, have you ever walked into a room and just felt a certain vibe?
Oh, yeah.
Or like met someone new and immediately you formed an opinion about them?
Absolutely.
That's system one, right?
Yeah, that's system one in action.
Just using those instincts and past experiences to make a judgment.
Like a mental shortcut, right?
Okay.
So system one relies on these shortcuts, we call them heuristics,
Heuristics.
to just
Yeah.
navigate the world efficiently.
Makes sense.
But,
Yeah.
it's constantly looking for patterns, making associations,
Right.
even if those associations aren't always accurate.
That makes sense, but it also sounds like it could lead to some pretty interesting mishaps.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the classic examples is this experiment called the Florida effect.
Okay, the Florida effect.
So researchers subtly exposed students to words
Uh-huh.
that were associated with old age, like
Forget.
forgetful in Florida.
Wait, just hearing those words had an effect.
Believe it or not, yes.
Wow.
Afterward, the students actually walked slower down the hallway.
No way.
It's a perfect illustration of, how system one can be primed without us even realizing it.
That's crazy. So just hearing certain words can actually trigger physical reactions.
Precisely.
Wow.
Those words, they're unconsciously activated thoughts of old age,
Uh-huh.
and then that influenced the student's behavior.
Okay.
It just shows how powerful those subtle influences can be.
Okay, so that's system one, the quick thinker, right?
Right.
What about system two? When does that come in?
System two is more deliberate.
Okay.
It's our analytical self. It handles those complex calculations, weighs the pros and cons,
Right.
helps us exercise self-control.
Yeah.
But it also tends to be a bit lazy.
Lazy. How so?
System two prefers to conserve energy
Okay.
whenever possible.
Uh-huh.
It often takes the easy route, accepting system one's suggestions
Oh, okay.
without much scrutiny.
So it's like system one is the impulsive friend,
Yes.
and then system two is the one trying to, like, keep things in check but just gives in because it's too much effort.
That's a great way to put it. And that's why we sometimes, fall prey to cognitive biases.
Okay.
We rely on those mental shortcuts even when they lead us astray.
Can you give me an example of one of those? Something that'll really make me think.
Have you ever heard of the bat and ball problem?
The bat and ball.
Yeah, it's a simple riddle, but it often trips people up
Okay.
because of our reliance on system one thinking.
Okay, let's hear it.
A bat and a ball cost $1 or 10 cents total.
Okay.
The bat costs $1 more than the ball.
Mm-hmm.
So how much does the ball cost?
10 cents.
That's what most people say.
Is it not?
But if you pause and engage system two,
Okay.
you do the math,
Uh-huh.
you'll realize the ball actually cost 5 cents.
Wow. I totally fell for that.
It's easy to do.
I can already see how understanding these two systems,
Yeah,
can help me make better decisions in life.
exactly. By recognizing those moments when system one might be leading us down the wrong path,
Yeah.
we can engage system two, double check our intuitions,
Uh-huh.
and, make better choices.
So thinking fast and slow is like a user manual for our brains.
It's more like a
Ah.
a fascinating exploration of how our minds work
Okay.
and why we sometimes make those, irrational decisions.
Yeah.
And it provides a framework for recognizing those shortcuts, biases, illusions that can trip us up.
It sounds like there's a lot more to unpack here.
Oh, definitely.
I'm ready to dive deeper into some of these cognitive biases and illusions.
Let's do it.
What else does thinking fast and slow reveal about how our minds work?
Well, let's talk about cognitive ease.
Okay. Okay, so we've established our brains have these two systems
Right.
working behind the scenes.
Yeah.
But what about all those quirks that influence our decisions?
Well, thinking fast and slow really dives into those.
Okay.
And one of the key concepts is this thing called cognitive ease.
Cognitive ease.
It's like this feeling of fluency and familiarity
Okay.
when something just clicks in your mind.
Like that aha moment,
Exactly.
when you finally understand something.
Yes, or like that feeling of confidence when you're right about something.
Uh-huh.
So cognitive ease, it signals to our system one that,
Yeah.
everything's going smoothly, there's no need to worry.
Okay.
It kind of leads to a sense of comfort,
Yeah.
and it makes us more likely to trust our intuitions.
Okay, so trust those gut feelings.
Well, here's the catch.
Uh-oh.
That same feeling of ease, it can also create illusions.
Wait, so something that feels true and familiar could actually be false?
Have you ever heard a rumor or a fact repeated so many times
Yeah.
that you just accepted it as true,
Oh, yeah, all the time.
even though you have no idea where it came from?
Yeah, like those urban legends everyone seems to know.
Right. That's a perfect example of how cognitive ease can lead to that illusion of truth.
So the more we hear something, the more familiar it becomes. Our brains are basically like, okay, if it's easy to remember, it must be true.
Our system one tends to equate that familiarity with truth.
Gotcha.
And this principle applies to more than just those random facts. It can influence our opinions, our preferences,
Right.
even the way we perceive information.
Interesting.
Thinking fast and slow gives this fascinating example using the body temperature of a chicken.
Okay, the body temperature of a chicken, I'm intrigued.
People were more likely to believe a statement about a chicken's body temperature
Mm-hmm.
if they had repeatedly seen the phrase,
Okay.
even if the temperature mentioned was completely made up.
So just seeing it over and over made it more believable.
Exactly. Repetition creates that sense of familiarity.
Wow.
And our system one, if system two is not engaged,
Mm-hmm.
it just accepts it.
That's kind of unsettling.
It is. It shows how repetition makes us susceptible to just accepting information.
This makes me think about all the information we encounter every day. Are we just constantly being influenced by this without even realizing it?
You're hitting on a really important point.
Like advertising slogans.
Yes.
Or even news headlines.
Exactly.
We see them repeatedly, they start to feel familiar.
Right.
And then we're just like, okay, well, that must be true.
Understanding this illusion of truth can help us become more critical
Okay.
consumers of information.
So we need to be wary of those things that feel easy and familiar.
Yeah, and ask yourself, do I actually believe this?
Right.
Or has it just become familiar through repetition?
So is there anything else we can do to avoid these traps?
Thinking fast and slow also talks about this idea of priming,
Priming.
which is another way system one can be influenced.
Right.
It's this idea that exposure to certain words, images, even environments can trigger thoughts and behaviors without us realizing it.
So our surroundings can prime our thoughts and actions.
Think about the Lady Macbeth effect.
The Lady Macbeth effect.
People who felt morally tainted, even just by thinking about an unethical act,
Yeah.
they suddenly have this urge to wash their hands.
It's like our brains were trying to physically cleanse ourselves.
Exactly. Even though the dirt was purely psychological,
Yeah.
it shows how priming can operate subconsciously
Wow.
and influence our behavior in these subtle but really powerful ways.
This makes me think about how we can be primed in everyday life.
Yeah.
Like, if you walk into a bakery and smell fresh bread,
Right?
you're suddenly more likely to buy something, even if you weren't planning on it.
Exactly. And it's not just those sensory cues either.
Okay.
Thinking fast and slow describes an experiment where the location of a polling place actually influenced how people voted.
What, really? Just the location?
It was a school funding initiative,
Okay.
and when people voted in schools,
Yeah.
they were more likely to support it.
So being in that environment
Yeah, it's like it primed them.
made those associations.
Right.
So even seemingly irrelevant factors can influence us.
It really underscores the importance of understanding these subtle influences.
Yeah.
Thinking fast and slow doesn't say we can eliminate these biases, but it does give us the tools to recognize them.
So instead of feeling like we're at the mercy of these subconscious influences,
Yeah.
we can start to recognize them, maybe even anticipate them.
Exactly. It's about becoming more aware of their presence.
But if we're constantly being primed and influenced,
Yeah.
how do we know what's really shaping our thoughts?
It's not about being immune to them.
Okay.
The book argues that understanding context and norms is crucial.
context and norms.
Yeah.
So we're talking about context and norms.
Yeah.
How do those play into this whole idea of understanding our own thinking?
Well, system one, that fast, intuitive part of our brains,
Right.
relies heavily on norms and expectations to make sense of the world.
Okay.
It's always looking for those patterns, trying to categorize things.
Based on our past experiences.
Exactly. And when something violates those norms,
Yeah.
it triggers surprise,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
which then prompts system two to step in and investigate.
So it's like our brain saying, hold on, something's not right here.
Precisely.
Thinking fast and slow gives that interesting example about bond prices.
Oh, right.
Reacting to Saddam Hussein's capture.
Yeah, initially bond prices rose,
Okay.
which suggested investors were seeking safer assets.
Makes sense.
But then they fell, and the headlines attributed the drop to increased investor confidence.
So even in the financial markets, our brains are trying to find these causal explanations.
Yeah, our system one is always looking for cause and effect,
Even if those explanations aren't always accurate.
even in complex situations where there might not be a clear answer.
We crave that sense of order.
We do.
This makes me think about how we interpret news events.
Yes.
Or even personal experiences,
Right.
Always trying to make sense of things, find a narrative.
And that's where understanding these mental shortcuts can be so helpful.
Okay.
It allows us to step back, question our assumptions.
Avoid jumping to conclusions.
Exa-
So it's like being more aware of our own biases.
Yeah, those thinking patterns that can lead us astray.
Right, right.
And thinking fast and slow offers a whole toolbox of strategies for doing just that.
So like what kind of strategies?
Well, one of the most fascinating concepts is this idea that we have two selves,
The two ourselves.
the experiencing self and the remembering self.
Okay, I'm all ears.
So the experiencing self is the one living in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
feeling the pleasure or pain as it unfolds.
Focus on the here and now.
Exactly.
Like that feeling of joy when you're listening to your favorite song.
Yes. Or
Perfect.
that sense of accomplishment when you finish a workout.
Yeah, totally.
But then we have the remembering self,
Okay.
the one that looks back and creates the narrative,
Uh-huh.
often focusing on the peak moments and the endings.
It's like creating that highlight reel in our minds,
Exactly.
maybe downplaying the not so great parts.
And here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
The remembering self is the one that calls the shots
Calls the shots how?
when we make decisions about the future.
So we're more likely to repeat experiences that left us with a good memory,
Yeah.
even if they weren't that enjoyable in the moment.
Think about it.
Yeah.
You might go back to a restaurant that had one amazing dish,
Right.
even if the rest of the meal was just okay.
Or sign up for another marathon even though you swore you'd never do it again.
Exactly. We're prioritizing the memories over the actual experience.
That's so true. It's fascinating and a little bit bizarre.
It is.
Well-
Thinking fast and slow really challenges us to think about how these two selves interact
Okay.
and how they influence our decision-making.
So how do we reconcile these two selves?
It's about being mindful of the biases of the remembering self
Oh.
when making decisions. Consider not just the peaks and endings, but the overall quality.
So maybe instead of focusing on that one amazing dessert,
Yeah,
we should think about how we felt during the whole meal.
right. Or instead of dwelling on crossing the finish line,
Yeah.
consider those hours of training leading up to it.
It's about creating a more balanced view of our experiences.
Exactly. And when we reflect on the past,
Yeah.
it's important to acknowledge both the good and the bad.
To avoid creating a distorted picture,
Precisely.
this whole deep dive into thinking fast and slow has been really eye-opening.
It's a fascinating book.
It really has. It's made me question everything I thought I knew about how my mind works.
It challenges us to think differently.
So what's the biggest takeaway? What's the one thing our listeners should remember from all of this?
I think it's about recognizing that our minds are incredibly complex,
Okay.
and our thinking is often influenced by factors we're not even aware of.
Yeah.
But by understanding these biases, illusions, and shortcuts, we can become more aware of our own thinking patterns.
Make better choices.
Exactly. Choices aligned with our goals and values.
It's like we've been given a secret decoder ring for our brains.
I like that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into thinking fast and slow.